Welcome to Choose Courage Inc., where we skip the boring intros and jump straight into reimagining business and workplace experiences with We Ain't Afraid to Go There conversations. In this episode, I get to chop it up again with the one and only Dan Mall, founder of Design System University and a couple other incredible companies. In this episode, we get to talk about the challenges of defining success on your own terms, how to stay true to your values even when it costs you, and how to push past fear when you're at a crossroads. So in this episode, we cover topics like the power of rejecting clients who don't align with your values and why that can be the key to preserving your peace. We talk about how to move beyond external feedback and the myths of success we're all chasing, the importance of making space for clarity by challenging fear, how multi-passionate people can stop shrinking and really start embracing their full complexity, what happens when you face the reality of your own suffering, and why leaning into it creates profound growth. And we also get into a game-changing perspective on enough. What is enough, and why rethinking money and success is the ultimate form of freedom. It's time to make some bold decisions and change your story. Let's get it. Have you ever had to turn down a client or a project because you felt like it was out of alignment in some ways, whether that was with your values or what have you? Curious maybe about like, how did you arrive or make that decision and what impact did it have?
Yeah, sure. So I can share a couple of stories about that. When I first started freelancing, so this is even before running my own business and my own agency, and I was just kind of freelancing on the side of having a full-time job, I had the pretty cut and dry morality, ethical, stuff, the standard stuff that just about everybody has. As somebody who grew up with a Christian worldview, it was like, well, I'm not going to do anything porn related. I'm not going to do anything alcohol related. Those were like easy ones for me to say no to. I didn't really have good reasons for that other than, those are things that I don't do in my personal life, so I don't want to do them in my professional life.
For sure.
Then as I worked with more and more clients and as I worked on more and more things, it started to get like, oh, this is kind of a gray area that I'm not sure about. I don't know what my boundaries are around these things. Over time, one of the things that I and then subsequently my company got better at is we started to define our values more and then started to make those public to the point where most of the time the wrong client would self-select out before they even got to us. We had a thing on our website at some point, I think this is maybe 3 or 4 years in, that was like reasons to work with us and reasons to not work with us. So, we just had it plainly stated there. If you're looking for the cheapest option, it's rarely going to be us. If you're looking for a local team, that's not going to be us. If you're looking for development and not design, that's not going to, we just had this list of criteria that people would be like, oh, well, so we would just get less and less of that. The more public we are about that and the more we redirected people to a public statement of policy around, what we were going to take and what we weren't going to take. But every so often, something would sneak through because we either wouldn't spot it or, something new would come up during the project. So we've had a couple of those before. I remember I wrote a blog post about this called Spine. And I remember there was one client who was working with us, and I had a team. I had a small team, designer, an engineer, and a producer on it. And it was some of the best work I've ever seen come out of our agency. And the art director that I had working on it at the time, he was the kind of art director who was like, I do one concept. I don't do multiple concepts. And so I was like, okay, well, let's see how that goes. So he did one concept, and we all looked at it, and we were like, yo, this is dope. This is, there is no better one than this. So we all felt really strongly about it, and we showed it to the client, and they were so excited. They were like, this is awesome. This is amazing. This is exactly what we want. It just does everything that we wanted to do. Like, so cool. Can we see another option? And we were like, why? And they're like, well, we just, this is awesome. I'm like, so if it's awesome, done, right? we're done. And well, we just want to know what we're missing. We don't know what we're missing. So could you just do another option? So the best case scenario is that we do another option and it's even better than this one. And then we were all wrong about how much we liked this one. So not really a great outcome. Or we come up with something new and it's not as good as this option. And so we show you a less good option next. And, we were like, well, why'd we waste the time? All this. So I talked to my team and I was like, do y'all want to do a second option? Should we entertain this? And my art director was like, I mean, I'm willing to, but I really believe in this one. And I was like, all right, what should, you want to stand behind this and say, yeah, we're only going to do one option. And he was like, yeah, I do. I was like, all right. So we stood behind it and said, hey, sorry, client, we're going to, we stand behind this. We think this is a really good option. I totally understand that you want to know what you're not having, but that could be an endless process, to find what you're not having just to choose this one again. And to me, it was starting to be a signal of like, oh, this is a client that doesn't really know what they want. So starting to sniff around that idea. So I'm like, I'm going to back this strategy of it's just one thing. And I remember the client saying to me like, Dan, you really willing to lose this gig over that? And I was like, I am. And he's like, all right. He said, let me get back to you. So he talked with his team. I got an email, and he's like, if that really is your decision, I think we're going to have to terminate this project then. I don't think we can move forward with you. And I was like, yeah, I understand that, assume that probably would be the case. And thanks for considering it, but we're really going to stand behind this. And he called me, and he's like, are you serious? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, all right, well, we definitely will have to terminate this. We have to find some other team to work with. So, consider this the end of the project. And they had paid us for half the project already. We just weren't going to get the other half. He said, we kind of called it even there. And he's like, okay, so I guess that's the project. I'm like, yeah, well, thanks for trusting us for half of it at least.
Yeah.
And he was like, on a separate note, I wish more people like you worked here. He's like, I've never known anybody who would walk away from a project like this. It was a really good project on the face of it. Awesome client, great problem to solve. The work had the potential to be really good. And he was just like, I wish you worked here. I wish I worked with more people like you who could stand behind their work like that. And one day when this is in the future somewhere, I'd love to buy you a beer, and I would love to talk to you about some of the stuff that happens here that makes this kind of stuff rare. And I was like, okay, cool. Yeah, great. And to me, I remember walking away from that, and I think it was $100,000 project or something. So we gotten paid $50,000, $50,000 we don't get. I'm like, well, that sucks because it's a lot of money. So we walked away from $50,000. But I remember being like, I mean, if you're ever going to lose a project, I think that's the way that I want to do it.
Yeah.
I'd want to lose a project in a way where the client's like, well, I wish that I worked with more people like you. It's somebody who respects my integrity at the end of the project, who didn't scream at me or any of those things. One more story I'll share. I remember we were going through a sales process with a really big client. It would have been one of the biggest projects we've ever done, and every time we passed contracts back and forth, it just got worse and worse for us. And I was like, what? I just have a bad feeling about it. And I had a couple of partners that I had brought on for the project, and it was like, it would be a really good payday for everybody individually. It would be good for a company. And I just got this bad sense about it. And I said, I don't feel good about this. And I was like, if this is how it's like in the sales process, imagine what it's going to be like if we work with them. We were signing up for, it would have been like a 2-year project. I was like, it's going to be like this for the next 2 years. So I just don't have good vibes about this. And my partner was like, are you sure you want to walk away from this? Because we're already deep enough into it. We already have done, X amount of weeks with discovery with them, and then we are contracting and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, yeah, I just don't think it just doesn't feel right. The vibes aren't the vibes are off. And he was like, all right. So we emailed our client and asked and said to him, we're sorry. I just think it's going in the wrong direction. I don't know that we're going to be a good fit to work with each other. And he called us, and I remember this is the total opposite of the last story he called us, put him on speakerphone, and he said, I'm at my kid's baseball game, and I can't believe that you're doing this to me right now. And he proceeded to yell many, many obscenities at us for the next, I don't know how long he would have gone, but after about 30 seconds of it, I was like, hey, thanks for everything, and just hung up. That was it, because I'm not trying to get yelled at, And like, bro, you're at your kid's baseball game. If you're telling the truth about that, it's weird, man. Go be at your kid's baseball game. So I was like, I feel like, yeah, we really dodged a bad situation there, with somebody who would just ream us out like that at his kid's baseball game. I was like, that would have been the client that we would have had.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've got a bunch more stories like that, but those two stick out.
That's wild. I mean, on a personal note, I just, I meet people who are like, yeah, my boss yells at me all the time. I'm like, there's one time and it's done. And I remember I had an experience like that where my manager, after I reported some concerning things about her to HR. All of a sudden, I had a random performance eval. And she was like,
Random.
I just can't help but think that you look very angry and aggressive on our calls. I'm so serious.
Whoa.
And she's like, but maybe I'm wrong. Is there something I'm missing? I'm like, yeah, I'm just like thinking and like watching. I was like not being angry and aggressive. And then she started like screaming and yelling at me about how, now context comes from like this very like fundamental Christian background. So she was yelling at me about how I don't show her any grace or mercy.
Oh
And she was
boy.
just screaming. And I had to end it. I'm like, this isn't productive anymore. And maybe we could talk about this another time. Went home, updated my resume. I'm like, I need to get off the East Coast and back to Chicago.
Yeah.
East Coast
Right.
is not it. And ended up getting a job and moving 3 months later.
Wow.
But anyways, yeah, that I feel like I'm having like kind of like two stories are coming up for me as well when it comes to this question. One is with this client who I loved their executive team, love them. They're like my favorite. And the organization was great too. You know, people were hungry, curious about the work, but it was their culture folk team that were just terrible.
Ironically.
T's for terrible. And, we're having to go back and forth on the proposal for another part of our engagement with them. And I'm at this point almost like having to educate these folks on things that they should have been competent on, and, on their own right. And talking to my business partner about it and my team, I'm like, listen, if we continue to work with this client, the emotional energy and weight it's taking, even in this part of the negotiating, I'm like, they will be the equivalent to 4 clients. And I'm not trying to have that kind of year.
Yep.
And so I had to reach out to their top executive and let them know, okay, we're not moving forward for these reasons. And this is like a 200K plus client. And that's a lot of money. But I was like, this client will be a thief of my joy and potentially break my spirit. And then for me, there's nothing more offensive than someone or an entity being able to break your spirit. And so let them go. And, the executive got back to me and they were like, hey, totally respect your decision, understand it. If anything, it makes me respect y'all more and we will find a way to work together again.
Love it.
And we're still in touch. We still talk to this client and it's just more of a matter of timing. But yeah, the fact that they saw us for who we are with that decision. And they're like, you could have said yes and just taken the paycheck and endured, but you were willing to say, nah, like, this ain't it. Yep. And so that was a good experience. The other story that comes to mind, oh my gosh. So some context. I'm someone who I feel very deeply.
Okay.
And my business partner, Alba Villamil, she's the one who keeps me grounded in those moments. So we were dealing with this client, already signed the contract and everything. They had hired us to help them do training essentially on how to be more trauma informed from a workplace culture standpoint. And the people that we started to deal with, though, we ended up being hand off to someone else. And both these people on this chain, they were so rude and passive aggressive. And I just have absolutely no tolerance for it. I'm so bad at people who are very rude and very passive aggressive. And so I'm like seeing what the things that they're saying to us in this email. And I'm telling Alba, I was like, I want to work with them. I'm like, I think we should fire them. And she's like, all right, well, how about you sleep on it? That's usually her statement to me. How about you sleep on it? And let's see how you feel tomorrow. So next morning, I'm like, yo, I got some of the best sleep of my life and I still want to fire them. I was like, I left corporate America to not deal with this bullshit.
Right.
And if they are treating us like this and being so disrespectful and so rude and passive aggressive, and they want us to help them cultivate a more trauma-informed workplace, I'm like, no, I'm not doing it. I will gladly refund them. I do not care. We will make the money back in some other way.
Yep.
And she's like, yeah, you're right. Because then they had just sent another email that was just tiptoeing this line. And she's like, yeah. She's like, I think you're right. And I was like, let me write a draft of the response. Let me sleep on it. And then you can look at it after I make some edits. And so did that. She made some edits and I told her, I was like, I want to be very explicit as to why we're not working with them. And it could be a teaching moment for them. I don't care. But I was like, we do need to talk to them about why we're saying no in hopes that they won't treat someone else like they've treated us. And we may be in a position to say no. Others may be like, yo, if we don't take this, we're not going to be able to eat, right? We need this job. So I was very explicit and candid about why we were letting them go. And even their response was just like, okay, that sounds good. We'll reach out for the refund. They never reached out.
Okay.
Even when we followed up with them, I was like, all right, well, let me know when you want this money. Ideally by the end of the year so you don't mess up my books.
Yeah. Right.
But yeah, I mean, sure. And again, we could have endured. It would have been like a few hour kind of engagement. But I think, at least for me, the longer I've been out of corporate and the more healed I've become, the less tolerant I am of the things that other people have deemed as acceptable.
Yeah. Ain't nobody got time for that.
No.
Yeah.
In this economy, no.
Right.
No time for that.
I wish I could remember where this quote is from, but it has stuck with me ever since I heard it, which is like, it's called values because it costs you something. So sometimes it costs you money. Sometimes it costs you, like, if you're not upholding your values, sometimes it costs your self-respect. Just be like, yeah, I'll just let them treat me like this. It's like, why? Why are we doing that? There's no need for that. And I feel like that's part of the empowerment of, especially when you run your own thing, you're like, why am I running my own thing and letting people treat me like this? What's the point for that? I'll go work for somebody then, for that.
Yeah.
So I've also, and I think that probably there's a lot of entrepreneurs in the same boat, which are like, you just have less and less tolerance for that. You're like, why are we wasting each other's time? There's so many other things that we could each be doing. Let's go do them, rather than spending time here.
Yeah, if I wanted to deal with that, I would go and help my billionaire boss go to space again.
There you go.
Like,
right. Uh-huh.
But no, I appreciate the note of like, there's a cost. And the reason why there's a cost is because there's often a call to act on something, right? And I think that's even why when I think about courage and the way we talk about courage at Choose Courage Inc., it's, courage is a verb. It's not just this noun or this thing, but rather it's this practice. And I'd love to hear from you if you have any examples of maybe how, especially as people who are probably listening to this, are thinking about either making a transition or they're in the midst of one, or maybe they're doubting their ability, right, to step into the things that they really want to pursue. How have you actively practiced courage in moments of doubt or transition?
So I talked a lot about my agency here that I ran for 10 years, but I'm not running it anymore. As of 2022, I started in 2012. I shut it down in 2022 for a combination of reasons. And one of those reasons is that it was 10 years and I enjoyed that 10 years. And then I was like, I have other 10 years left. Maybe in my career, I have 2 more 10-year chunks or 3 more 10-year chunks left. So I don't want to spend another 10 years doing a thing that I just did, even though it was good. And so one of the challenges to that is I didn't know what the next thing was. I didn't have anything lined up. And normally so far I've had that where I was working at an agency before, and then I had this plan to start my own, but I had kind of an easy transition into that because I already knew what the next thing was before I stopped doing it. This time in 2022, I didn't have that. I didn't have, I know what the next thing is going to be, so I'm going to transition into it. I had a slight inkling that one of the things I had learned while running an agency is what I liked about it was actually teaching clients things as opposed to doing things for them. So I'm like, I think I would rather do something that's more educational and teaching related more than, you buy deliverables from us and we go and work on that stuff. I liked doing that for a while, and then I started to like something else more. So to me, I stopped running my agency. I shut down my agency, but I didn't know what's next. And even now, a year and a half later, almost 2 years later, I'm still a little bit like, I'm not really sure what the next thing is. And what's really tough is, for me, is I've always been a person to look for and try to design the outcomes. And I'm like, well, I can't design this outcome. There's too much ambiguity there, and I can't. There's not enough that I can control in there. I want to, I really want to. I wish I could, but I can't. And so to me, it's been like, I think the courage is just to go. It's just the process. Like I'm doing the actions, even though I don't know what the outcome is, which is very different for me. And to me, that I feel like the only way to do that is through courage. What I do is I wake up every day and I do the things that I've committed to do. I don't know what that's going to lead to, which is super duper uncomfortable. I don't like that one bit. But I'm like,
Yes.
I know these things are going to lead to something that I think is going to be good for me, but I'm prioritizing the actions of those things as opposed to the outcome. To me, it's like I want to do things that engage me. I want to do things where I'm learning. I want to do things that are fun. I want to do things that are creative. So I'm spending my time over the last year and a half just doing those things, whatever those things are, and kind of let me wander a little bit, which for me is very different because even as a kid, I was like, I didn't want to be a designer, but I wanted to be an animator. I knew I was going to be in a creative field. And so I've always had this, like, I'm going to go do that thing. And in the last year and a half, I'm like, I don't have that. And so,
Yeah.
world turmoil and midlife crisis and, all that stuff is kind of swirled in there somewhere. But to me, I'm like, I think that feels like one of the most courageous things that I've done because I don't know what the outcome of that stuff is going to be, but I'm doing it anyway.
Yo, and I think what I'm hearing too is the way that you have been able to actually practice courage in those moments is actually by leaning more into the tension between fear and possibility. Kind of like working through it instead of like, okay, how do I move past this?
Right. Yes. Because I know there's something in the middle there. Like I sense it. I feel it. There's something there, but I can't identify it. But I'm like, well, that's enough for me. That's enough for me to move toward that.
Yeah.
That even though I don't know what it is, and it might be terrible, but I don't know. I want to see. And one thing that I've learned in running my last business is like the potential for reward is commensurate to the risk, the amount of risk that you take. So I'm like, all right, if I want a big reward, I have to be willing to take a good bit of risk. So that's what this feels like to me. It's like, all right, there's a lot of risk here, which probably means I think I'll win. If I'm going to win, I think I'm going to win big here. If I'm going to lose, I might lose big here too. That's the other side of it. But
Yeah,
I think there's something really good here. Not around it, not over it, not not after it, but like in the middle of it.
Yes. And I'm also just hearing the importance of trusting your gut in the midst of that.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of times we can doubt ourselves and our potential and second guess it, right? And so the fact that you're even honoring that, I think is huge. It's really huge.
Yeah, one of the things that last year my therapist said this to me, and it really stuck with me all year. I thought about it daily, and it was such a small thing, and I think she kind of just threw it out as a whim, but to me it was like such a big thing. But at the end of our session, she was like, I had just gotten a new assistant, and my assistant was trying to set up like, okay, when's your next appointment going to be? When do you want your next session to be? And she said to me, my therapist said to me, she's like, I know you have this new assistant, and I know she's trying to set up a regular schedule for us to chat or whatever. She's like, Dan, you don't work like that. And I was like, what do you mean I don't work like that? She's like, we don't have to set up regular sessions. You have a project to do, finish your project, and then come talk to me next. And I was like, and by project, she meant there is an emotional project that I'm working on that she has assigned me. She's like, whenever you finish that, that's when our next session is going to be. It doesn't have to be every 2 weeks. And to me, that was brain breaking because I was like, but doesn't everybody do therapy every week or every 2 weeks or every month or like on some schedule? And she's like, you don't work like that. You don't have to do it like that because you don't do that. And it just gave me a lot of permission of like, oh, I don't do that, so I don't need to do that. I need to do it the way that I need to do it, whatever way that is. And it's just another one of those reinforcing things of like, your way's not going to be the way that the rest of the world does it. That's actually a special thing. That's not weird. That's not abnormal, or it is abnormal, but in all the best ways.
Yeah.
It's like you're doing it your own way because that's the way that works for you, and it's not going to look like what it looks like for everybody else. And that has stuck with me. Like every day, there's something that I'm like, right, I know that this is the usual way that other people do this, and this is the usual way. Do I want to do it that way, or do I have a different way of doing this thing? So it has become an inflection point for me and a way to kind of reflect and look at things. It's like a new lens for me to look at decisions and actions and paths and things like that.
That's good. That's good. And yeah, there are probably a lot of people who are listening right now who are waiting for permission for things that they only need permission from themselves.
Yes. When I have somebody that I'm mentoring or coaching, I try to take on a lot of like giving them the permission that I can sense they're not giving them themselves. If they need to hear it externalized, I'm like, okay, maybe I could be that voice for them. And a lot of times I'll try to ask for permission for that too. But some people just need to hear it externalized. They need to hear it from someone else, even though it's their inner voice saying it, but that they're silencing or that they're ignoring. It's, you don't have to form an LLC. You can wait 6 months for that. For somebody, that's the blocker. The blocker is, well, I don't have a lawyer, and I need to set up an LLC because that's the right thing to do, and it is the right thing to do. But so what? You don't have to do it that way. Go make your first sale. Go sell whatever that thing is. Then figure out the LLC.
Yeah, and when I'm thinking about what are ways that maybe I've actively practiced courage in those moments of doubt or transition, I think, not to oversimplify it, but it was just to keep going. And I can think of 2 moments specifically where I had 2 very wise friends just speak a lot of encouragement and love into my life. And one was, there's somewhere where I've worked where they're not even on my LinkedIn. They're not even on my resume because it was one of the most toxic, abusive things I've ever had to experience in my whole life. To the point where when I had to get attorneys involved, and my attorney was like, wow, it feels like they hate you and they want you to die.
Whoa.
Like, it was so bad. And when I left that role in that company, I ended up picking up something else, but it was like a 60% pay cut.
Ouch.
And I remember I was talking to one of my friends and told her, I feel like I'm just moving backwards. I feel like I've worked so hard to get to this certain point, and now I'm just being pulled away from where I thought I was supposed to be going. And she said, I want you to think about this as a slingshot moment. Sometimes in life, we are put into these slingshot moments where it feels like we're being pulled backwards, but it's really to launch us into something different.
Wow.
And something new. And that something new ended up being UX for me.
What a reframe. That's awesome.
And so now when I feel that sentiment of like, I feel like I'm being pulled backwards, I feel like I'm taking 3 steps back, my reframe now is, how is this a slingshot moment? And what should I be looking forward into in this slingshot moment? How do I not waste this opportunity to launch myself into something different, into something better, into something that's more in alignment with me and my values and what I'm about? And the other time I think about was, listen, February of 2023, I will probably talk about this month forever on this podcast because it was really the worst month of my life. And I remember talking to one of my girls and she was like, I was telling her between sobs, I'm like, I feel like I'm losing everything. And she said, sometimes in life we have these moments that feel like liquidation sales, where it feels like everything has to go. But the reason for that is because we have to make room for the new.
Love that.
And the new ended up being new strategies, new approaches to business. And we ended up, the following year, we ended up increasing our revenue by 1,100%.
Amazing.
Insane. But it's honestly shifting how I relate to pain and suffering. And deciding that still in the midst of it, I'm still going to continue. I'm still going to go forward. That I'm able to make my way through it, and that there are other people with me who have also been here before. And I don't have to use toxic positivity to like bring myself into this either. Yeah. One like just note to nerd out on. So a lot of people don't know this, but in addition to my master's in counseling, I have my master's in theological studies.
Oh, wow. Okay.
A lot of that is because when you're working with people who are suffering, they're often like, where's God? And I remember one of the things I learned in that grad program was historically how you look at like the white evangelical church and the black church. And, historically, when you look at the white evangelical church in America, white Protestant church, when they think about Jesus suffering, they often limited it to like, he just suffered on the cross, he died, but like, we're all good now. It's all about moving forward. Let's just like, it's all about unity. We're all the same race, the human race, whatever. And so it's not about like, we don't need to linger in that suffering crap. We can just move forward. Whereas historically, when you look at the Black church, when you look at the Latinx church, when you look at a lot of historically marginalized churches in America, they not only understood Jesus as suffering on the cross, but suffering in his life, which is why they've always been more intentional and more aware of social justice things. The fact that there is suffering happening around us. But even still in the midst of it, it's about continuing. It's about going forward. It's about going on. And it's not about diminishing or shrinking or gaslighting yourself into like, it's not that bad. Like, it can be bad, right? But it's like, are you going to continue to move forward because you have a greater vision and purpose in mind? And so theologically, I probably anchor myself more in that camp, because I can't just gaslight my way, use toxic positivity to keep it going. Like, I need to acknowledge this is hard. This is, difficult, but still I will go forward. Still I will do A, B, and C.
I love that. So good. I didn't know that you had your master's in theological studies. That's so
yeah,
cool.
Yeah. It's a quirky one, but I feel like, honestly, when I talk to a lot of my corporate clients, especially when we're working with executives, they appreciate it. Because I think, especially within hyper-capitalistic systems, it's easy to numb our spiritual health and the things that are a part of that. I wrote this piece on why your spiritual health is important if you are a designer. And really what it's getting at is, when I think about spirituality, I'm going to probably use the Brene Brown definition of sorts, where spirituality are the things that give you purpose and meaning and help you feel grounded. So for some people, that's church, that's going to mosque, what have you. For other people, it's fishing, it's gardening, right? And we saw a lot of this in 2020, where people's sense of spirituality and purpose was rocked. And they're like, why does this even matter anymore? What am I doing? And I find that a lot of folks in corporates, especially our executives, they're struggling with that. Why am I working 70 hours a week and missing my kids' basketball games? Why am I doing this to get a promotion when my marriage is about to fall apart? And so I think there's a place of, how do we, within our craft and design business, have it help us become and feel more whole and more grounded in the things that really matter to us.
I love that. I do a lot of coaching with like design leaders with the consulting that I do. And a lot of them are not high up enough in their organizations that they have a purview of some of the things that like are higher level of, this is why we're doing this, not just at the ground level, but they're somewhere in middle management. So I feel like that there's like a danger zone there, because they're like, I don't know why we're doing what we're doing, but I'm also removed from the people who are doing it as well. So it's like I'm in this like this purgatory here, somewhere in the middle. And a lot of times what I tend to point them to is like, well, let's figure out like your purpose for being here, even if it's not like the high level, we're trying to change the world to do X or Y or Z, that your bosses and your VPs and your CEO is thinking about. Well, what's the version for you? What's the version for you while you're here? And a lot of times that's enough to activate them to go, oh, now I have a purpose for being here that's more than just, I'm just here to like middle manage and meddle in the work and make sure that people are meeting their deadlines, but also I don't have any impact at the, at a higher level, at an executive level, but they have something that they are going for that's a little bit higher purpose than I'm just here to manage the work. I'm just here because it feels, other than that, it feels like, well, they could just get on without me, or they could just find somebody to replace me, in that way.
Yeah, and that brings me to the topic of limiting beliefs, right? There's so many limiting beliefs that I think especially a lot of designers have to like work through within the workplace, within their practice. But then I think there are just some unique things for the designers, the UX folks who also want to switch into entrepreneurship, right? And I know you and I briefly had a conversation on this, so I'm going to kind of lead you a little bit. I'm kind of curious about how, in your opinion, like, how do you feel like aspiring designers who want to be entrepreneurs, how can they challenge their own limiting beliefs around specifically money and success when, as they're thinking about building a business that they're proud of?
Oh, that's a good one. I love this topic. Again, I'm a glass half full kind of person. I try not to tip over into the toxic positivity range, of that. So I'm like clearly in the like positivity inside of it. Part of what I love about being a designer is I feel like we have a cheat code in that we are trained and our job is to get reps and practice and build the muscles of observing a situation, making a judgment or a few judgments or hypotheses about what could be better about that situation or environment. And then the ability to try to like, all right, well, I'm going to try this thing to make it better. I'm going to do a test. I'm going to, and we get to do that over and over again. For those of us who go to design school, we get taught it in school academically. For those of us who do it as a career, we get to do it in all sorts of different places and different teams, different companies for different things. And I think that that's a superpower, to be able to observe a situation and go, I know something that can make this better. And I've had small instances of that aside from design, I'm like, oh, it really is a superpower. I remember when my brother was in nursing school, he was having trouble with test taking. And I was like, well, why don't you come over and let me watch you take a practice test? And then, I want you to talk me through the way that you're answering these questions and evaluating these questions. And then I observed some things about it, and I gave him some suggestions of things that he could change, and he started getting better grades. And he came back to me, and he was like, how did you do that? You're a designer. And I'm like, right, that's what I do. He's like, I thought it was like fonts and colors and stuff. I'm like, it is, but that's not the real job.
He's triggered thousands of designers without knowing
Right.
it by saying that.
Totally, like, right. But like that's I think the world's perception of us, but that's not really what we do. What we do is we are able to come into situations and ideally make them better, to the extent that we can. So I think that's true. That's why I'm also a firm believer in like designers starting their own business. I think we start at a higher level than other people who are not designers, because we have the ability to go, what's wrong with the taxi industry? What's wrong with the education system? What's wrong with the insurance system? I think that designers are the kinds of people who are going to be able to change that. Not exclusively designers, but certainly designers, So I think that the limiting belief that I think a lot of designers have is that is not a profitable skill, or that should not be a profitable skill, and that's like somehow like a charity because it's doing something good for the world. I'm like, no, that like it can be both of those things. It can be profitable and charitable. Those two things are not conflicting ideas. And I think that a lot of people think, well, no, I don't want to be salesy. I don't want to do sales because that somehow betrays the goodness of the design work that you're like. It's not that. And I think when I work with designers who or entrepreneurs or want to start their own business, a lot of my work with them it tends to be around like, let's remove the sales part from it. Let's remove the money part from it. And do you actually believe that you are doing a good thing for people? Because if you do, then you're not going to be able to contain yourself to get that thing into their lives as much as you can. And then we can figure out sales from there. But for a lot of designers, they're like, I actually don't know if my thing is good for not much less the world, but for people. I'm like, well, so that's the thing that we've got to change then first.
Yeah.
Are you actually offering something good? And if you are, then your job is to try and get it into people's lives as much as you can. Their job is to compensate you to continue to do that for as many people as you can. And I forget where I read this, but I remember somebody saying, like, if you really want to do charity work for people, the best way to do that is to get super rich, and then you can spend as much time as you want doing the charity work. Right? Like, use your money, use your fame, use your influence then to go do that charity work. And I've adopted a version of that, for me, which is I have 2 rates now. It's full price or free. Like, I don't have discounted rates. I don't have it. It's a full price for doing what I do, and I'm really good at what I do, so I charge really well for it, and I should get paid really well for doing that. And that way, it gives me the time, it gives me the money, it gives me the space that when somebody's, hey, can you help me with this? Yes, I'll help you with it. Well, will you charge me a discounted rate? No, I'll just do it. I'll just do it for you. That's my gift. Like, I can gift it to somebody. And it, I'm certainly guilty of a little bit of black and white thinking there, but it helps me to be clear about what thing I'm doing and what thing I'm offering. So, back to the question about the limiting belief, I think part of the limiting belief for a lot of designers who want to be entrepreneurs is the thing that you're actually doing, the thing that you're doing, is that actually helpful? Is that something that you actually think is helping people? And if it is, you should be really well compensated for that, because helping people is a valuable thing. They value it. You can capture something back from that, from the value that you're making, for other people. And I think you should, because that's the way that we live in society, is we do things for other people and they reward us with their compensation, with their time, with their money, with other things like that. And I think that dynamic is something that I think a lot of designers have just like tangled up.
Yes. +1 to all of that. And I also think, especially within the design industry, the UX industry, There's been this interesting thing I've noticed where, especially in the last few years, it's almost like they're just realizing that they exist for the purpose of capitalism. And a lot of posts on LinkedIn are mad about that. And they're like upset at the company. I'm like, you do realize like that is literally the main existence of your job
Right. It's been
to
this all along.
all along. Like I actually there's a documentary on Netflix about essentially I'm forgetting what it's called, but it's basically about how like we're just spending a lot of money online on these stores and it's adding towards all this pollution and waste. But what's interesting is they interview a couple UX designers. And my main takeaway was like UX designers are helping to ruin the world by helping people to buy a bunch of things that they don't need.
Right.
And but I definitely kept that to myself. But I feel like a lot of folks I just see a lot of rhetoric online about that feels so against the idea of charging for your value and your worth and like actually making money that I think a lot of designers who would be great entrepreneurs feel too afraid to actually make those steps because
Yes.
of, I think the community has this weird understanding of, and honestly like a poor understanding of capitalism, but I also I think they can struggle to see that capitalism and commerce aren't the same thing. Commerce has existed longer than capitalism, right? And so what does that mean then to be different and to challenge the status quo of how do you pursue business? And so I'll say two limiting beliefs quickly that I think would be helpful for how people can start to challenge as it pertains to money and success in business. One is to ask yourself, who taught me this? Who taught me how to think about money? How's that changed? When did that change? Who's taught me what does it mean to be successful in business? Why have I adopted that? How do I actually see that and want that to be for me? What are the things that I actually need to heal from in terms of growing up? What are the own generational chains I need to break that are also influencing how I think about money and success? And I think for me, a lot of people, part of it is being a part of the corporate America machine. A lot of folks who are probably listening to this have no idea what enough is for them. And so you get that promotion, that extra money, and that was enough, and now it's not, because now there's another thing to look for. Now there's another thing to move forward. And I think people don't have clarity on what's enough. What's your number? Is often what I ask entrepreneurs. What's your number? Have you actually done the math of how much you need to live like a nice lifestyle, one that doesn't require you to live from ramen noodle pack to ramen noodle pack, but something that's comfortable? And every time I have people do this exercise, they realize, oh, I actually don't need $400,000 to work on this website.
Mm-hmm.
And I could still be happy and I can still feel good and spend time with my family and loved ones. And I think to that end, it also then requires us to redefine success. Success for me these days, if I'm able to deepen my sense of peace and clarity, food's in the fridge, money's in the account, like that's success. I can go to bed not hating my life every night. That's pretty successful to me.
I love it.
I can be creative. I'm trusting my gut more. I'm less afraid. Like that's success. Like wow, successful. It's less about me being able to write for Fastco or win these awards or whatever. Those are carrots that I've been told to pursue. When I'm on my deathbed, I promise you, I'm not going to be clutching all these awards in my grave. Like, no one cares. And we're all going to be dead in 70 or whatever years anyways, if you're listening to this. So, like, it actually doesn't matter. Like, all these things that you want people to praise you for being successful for literally does not matter. We will all be dead in 70 or whatever years. So, my encouragement to folks is to get clear now. What does success mean to you?
Yes.
What is enough? Because when you die, you're not taking it with you. So get it together.
I have at one point in my career, awards were like the thing that was like the most important thing to me. And I've been lucky to get a lot of them. And in my basement right now is 2 Rubbermaid containers full of all the awards that that I've won. That I'm like, and that's not to discredit that period of my life either. It's like at one point that was important to me, and then I changed, and then it's not important to me anymore. And so, like, I don't regret chasing that, but it's cool. I've grown, I've evolved, I've moved, and there are some things that persist from when I was, early in my career when I was younger, and there's some things that was like, oh no, that was a season, and that season, that was cool in that season, and I want and need different things in this season.
That part. Okay, I know we're getting close to our time, and I mean, I feel like I could chat with you forever. I would love to maybe to close with this thought of, what do you hope other designers and entrepreneurs, what do you hope that they would learn from your journey about redefining success and creating impact through business?
So I'll break the fourth wall a little bit here, where like you prepped me for this question, so I had an answer. But what is so cool, and kind of catches me off guard is what I wrote down was the word enough, and you just mentioned it, and that's the thing is, I recently, like in the last couple of years, did that exercise for the first time, and I wrote, and my version of it was like I wrote down, what is the life that I would like just kill to have? What's like the top? The top thing, if I'm thinking the most luxurious, without being frivolous, without crossing that line of luxury and just being like, oh, I don't know, I'll take private jets anywhere. I don't want to take private jets anywhere. That's not a thing that I desire. There are other things that I desire. So what's the line of like, if I could think of the most amount of luxury that I could ever have, realistically, without being just flippant about it. And I did the exercise, and it's like, I want to buy rare sneakers once a quarter. I want to like go to Michelin star restaurants 3 or 4 times a year. I want so I made a list of all those things. And before I started listing them out, to me it was like, well, I have to be like a multimillionaire, in order to have those things. Once I listed it out and I quantified all of it, the number is $578,000, which is a ton of money, but it's also not millions and millions and billions of dollars. And I was like, oh, if I could get to there, I'll be living large. That, even though that's hard to get to, that's a lot of money to be able to make. It's not like, oh, that's impossible and I'll never get there. It's like, no, I could actually work toward that. That feels achievable at some level. I have to change some things about my life or about my work or about this or about but I could actually make a plan toward that because it's something that doesn't feel out of reach or like always out of reach. It's like, well, maybe it might be out of reach now, but maybe someday, maybe in the next 10 years, in the next 2 years, well, what could I do to make it 1 year? I could actually design the plan to that. And that's and I think that when designers start to do that, so like I do group coaching with freelancers and agency owners, and that's the first exercise. It's like, pick the number. So similar to what you were saying is pick the number, because otherwise, if you don't have the number, the answer is just more. How much do you want? More than what? More than I have now, more than I'll have then. So it's a constant.
Do you have a percentage in mind, or
right? No. It's just more. You make $1 million, you got to make 2 million. You make 10 million, you got to make 20 million. You make 10 million, you got to make 50 million. You have 10 clients, you got to have 20 clients. You have 100 customers, you need 200 customers. It's always more and more and more. And you just chase all of that. So like, at what point can you be like, I'm good? I'm good. And I think that is a very freeing and liberating and empowering idea to be like, that's the number. That's and it can change and it can move and you can add it. So after I did that exercise, a year later, I was like, oh, there's actually a thing I want to add to that list, because there's like another thing that I would actually like to live this way too. It's like, all right, well, that added an extra $50,000 to that amount. So, okay, cool. My plan can change a little bit, but by having it, I can actually design a way to get to it or a way to get closer to it. And I think that when designers think that their only skill is, well, I know how to design, which means I know how to design dashboards, I know how to design, landing page or something like that. It's like, no, you have the ability to be intentional about something and plot your way to get to it. That applies to anything. We could change the education system that way. We could change the insurance system that way. We could change a lot of things that way. Not without help, not without hard work, but we could change a lot of things that way. And I think a designer's job is to help make change. how do you help make change outside of yourself if you can't even do it for yourself first? So, okay, let's put our own, our own seatbelts and safety vests on before we help everybody else.
Yeah.
And I think that's the first exercise. So if there's anything that any designer I talk to walks away from, it's do that thing for yourself. Because I think once you know that you have enough, all the rest is extra. It's going to be gravy. And that's where you can start to be, well, that's the charity work that I'm going to do, or that's the gifting that I'm going to do. That's how I can help other people. That's where I get all this extra time, space, energy, is because you're good. And I think that a lot of us, myself included, don't know when we've gotten to that place. We might have gone past it already, but we don't know because we never marked it. So I want that for all designers.
That's good. Yeah. If I can like build on that, of what would I hope that other designers and entrepreneurs would learn from my journey when it comes to redefining success and creating impact. There's kind of like, I guess, 2 quick bullet points, and it is, I want you to learn, my hope is like you can see that you don't have to endure. You don't have to endure the things that you're kind of gritting your way through right now. You have options. There can be opportunities. You just have to realize that you don't have to live in the what if, and go for it. And the second thing I would say is, I hope you would learn that it's okay if your life doesn't make sense to people. It's okay, because you are going to be challenging things, doing things differently. And the quicker you can make peace with the fact that you're not everyone's cup of tea, but whose you will, you'll be in a big way. Like, you'll be good. I do organizational trauma corporate consulting. I work with design and product teams on how to not be harmful to their practitioners, to their participants. And then I'm also building an astrology for pets app. Like, because I can, because I want to. And so why not? I think I hope people would ask that question more of themselves. Why not? Why not do this? Why not me? And so, yeah.
Yes, I love that.
So thank you so much. I obviously could be chatting for you for hours.
Yeah, we could be here forever.
I know. But I just appreciate you extending the time, the energy, the emotional wisdom to me and to others. So thank you.
Oh, it's an honor. Thank you for having me on the show and inviting me to be on it.
Of course. Thanks for hanging out with us and diving into some of these real and unfiltered conversations. We know your time is valuable, and so we don't take it for granted. If today's episode made you think, if it challenged you, or gave you something new to consider, we'd love for you to hit that follow button on whatever streaming service you're using. That way, you'll never miss an episode when we drop them. And if you want to go even deeper, sign up for our newsletter at choosecourageinc.com, and you'll get updates on new episodes, access to exclusive freebies, and first dibs on coaching opportunities and other resources to help you make bold moves in your life and business. So we appreciate you, we see you, and we're rooting for you. Until next time, keep choosing courage over comfort, and a friendly reminder to drink some water.